So we are here at the 18th Florence Rail Forum. This forum is about the digitalization of rail freight, in particular the rail freight corridors. I have the pleasure to be with Paul Hegge. He is the Public Affairs Director of Lineas, the first and probably only fully privatized rail freight operator in Europe. Paul, can we bring back the good old days of railways where we had 70% market share? Is that the ambition?
I wish it was, but that unfortunately I don't think is going to be the case. But at least we as a company, but also in Europe, all the rail freight companies themselves have expressed the ambition to double their volumes again by 2030, meaning that we will capture 30% of the market share in Europe. And that's already a tremendous ambition. Let's also be clear, let's be honest, the world has changed an awful lot. The big game changer came in over the past few decades, and that's the truck. And the truck will not go away. The truck is also not really the enemy, I would say, but it has become the standard in logistics. So we as railway companies in rail freight, we have to live up to the standards of quality that is being delivered by the trucking sector in terms of flexibility, in terms of pricing even, and in terms of reliability. But I think we are moving towards that goal. And if we can, then definitely it is possible to double the volumes, which would really be of a big benefit also for the whole of Europe society-wise, in terms of environment, in terms of climate, and in terms of reduction of congestion on many of the roads that we have.
But we are not there yet. What are the main obstacles you're facing?
Well, the main obstacles that we're facing is that the sector is still very fragmentized in the sense that it has been long time run like all national systems, and it still is the case often for passengers. I mean, you have a few international passenger services, obviously, but freight by nature is international. And so we are faced with lots of national regulations and rules that hamper us from really working smoothly and interoperably all over Europe. The operators themselves are also quite fragmented. We all have our own rules and regulations and data, which we often don't share, or we're not ready really to change our practices to make sure that they work more at the European level. No, we tend to stick even to our own way of working, saying, oh, we are the best, so we'll have to do it our way. But this obviously is not the way forward. And we really have to go to a European layer in terms of interoperability, meaning that we as companies have to share certain practices and really have to come to common operational procedures. And on the other hand, we really need to, forget about being afraid of sharing certain data, because a lot of anxiety regarding data sharing. And the anxiety comes from maybe the idea that all of us are sitting on a treasure of data, and people nowadays say the new gold is data. Yeah, okay, that may be the case, but if everybody sits on his own treasure, they don't realize that maybe the treasure could be empty, or it's not as worthy as they think it is. On the other hand, they underestimate the treasure that is probably laying in front of them if they share the data with one another. So this is something that we have to overcome.
How can we help overcome this, or whose role is it to overcome this? Is it just a mindset? Does it need regulation from the European Commission? Does it need some constraints or a big crisis? Or how would we move forward in that digital era?
I think it's a bit of everything, of course. I mean, it's a mindset is change that's obviously needed, but I think it's being pushed more and more also by the customers to have this mindset. And if you really want to go to a 30% market share, you will have to do it with a network. You cannot do it alone. You need partners all over the place in order to do that. You also need to come up with solutions end to end, no longer just block trains. Otherwise, with block trains, we will not reach a 30%. So that means integrating also other operators, whether they're trucking companies, inland waterway companies, and so on, forwarders. So that will push us forward for a mind change, I think. A crisis, I think economic crisis can always help, but it can also create more anxiety. So I doubt that I wouldn't go for. But then regulations and rules and enforcement of certain regulations and rules is certainly a way forward as well. If we're not capable of doing it by ourselves, well, then the European Commission or some neutral agency should push us forward. And I think we have set standards. We have to really make sure that we reinforce those standards and make sure that we update those standards up to the latest possibilities also in terms of technology.
If I may add one more question. Some people this morning, they said this is all fine, but the level playing field is skewed. And, because road is easier, cheaper than rail, and if we digitalize everything, we will just give away, it will even be worse for the railway freight. How is, do you think we need to internalize the cost before we digitalize, or?
No. Let's not look for further excuses to digitalize. I think digitalization is absolutely a necessity, regardless of the level playing field. I would even say if we don't start digitalizing very fast, the level playing field or the gap in the level playing field will only increase, because I think in the transport sector, road transport sector is actually moving ahead in many ways faster than we are in terms of digitalization. So the gap is increasing. So let's not use level playing field as an excuse, but it would be very helpful, of course, to have a level playing field, because that would increase productivity and profitability also of our companies, which should enable us also to more invest into digitalization. Because, for instance, one of the biggest investments that railway operators are facing in Europe is the onboard units for ETCS, which, as you know, is a basis for digitalization. But the investments are quite humongous, and we would need more profitability in order to make those investments. So level playing field will obviously help, but let's not use it as an excuse.
That's very clear. Thank you, Paul, for your insights.
You're welcome.